Hello everyone.
Good evening everyone.
Evening.
I'm Bhavani Kalaria and this is Kishan Bhatt. We're here from the London Law Practice for our first ever London Law Practice live legal update. Well, we just wanted this to be a really informal way of just talking about all the stuff that's been happening in the news. There's been a lot of news clearly. It's not been a slow news few months. Well, we're obviously going to talk about Brexit.
Yeah, of course.
We're probably going to try and cover some of the other big legal news kind of around employment and a few other bits and pieces. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so should we start with
Brexit?
With Brexit, we'll start with Brexit.
Well, we've got, I think all the headlines have got a clear picture of this epic photo of Theresa May signing away the deal of Article 50 and the formal process, the notification of leaving the European Union.
Yeah.
So obviously a hot topic. And
it is a hot topic.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the thing is this picture, which is also in the Times today and Financial Times and lots of other places, is kind of the end of the beginning part of the whole process. So, you know, we've been through already a Supreme Court decision that said Parliament had to have a say in kind of triggering Article 50. Government has obviously passed a very short bill to that effect. We've had a white paper. So there's been lots of news around just doing this, and today was the final part of it. The letter's gone.
Yeah, the final say.
The European Commission received it today at about 11:30 UK time, 12:30 UK time. So we've given notice.
And Donald Tusk responded, didn't he? He said, "Really sad for you guys to go. We will miss you." That's the words that he used. But that's the way it is. I guess.
We basically said it's our fault, not yours.
Yeah.
So I think we've started it. But it's, I mean, look, we can jest about it, and it's been interesting. I think for lawyers, especially, you know, the last time we ever looked at public law, constitutional issues was probably, you know, when we were studying about it and read EU textbooks, and it's been a long time since anyone's really had to think about how European law has affected the law that we practice here, and I think this has given all of us a chance to get into it in a bit more meaty way.
Definitely.
So it's kind of a combination of law and politics. I mean, I guess the thing that we need to think about, and what's interesting from her letter, is the issues that arise from, that we have to think about. So most people may well know that the single market access that people have been talking about is about allowing people and goods and capital and services to move around freely between all the 28 and soon to be 27 European countries. And so I guess the issues are, you know, what are the things that we're likely to see? Well,
what's the way forward? I think there's loads of issues that come to mind. One is obviously my area, workers' rights, and what's going to happen and impact that. At the moment, of course, as we know, the European Union protects workers quite significantly. You know, we've got limits on working hours. We've got something called the Working Time Directive, and things like time off. So an employee has to work at least has to have a time off. They work 48 hours a day, so they should have a fortnight off, and also a rest period. If they work at least 11 hours consecutively, they have to have a rest period and a rest break. And of course, there's 28 days of annual leave. You know, we enjoy these benefits. A lot of people don't realise that they enjoy these benefits because they're protected by EU law, and it's kind of, I guess, it's just embedded in our system, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are, I mean, I was looking at kind of the issues about all of this, and if you pick up any of the legal press, and I've been looking at this for the last kind of few months, all of it, I mean, look at this, there's an article here in the Law Society Gazette, which was from a couple of months ago, about UK firms dealing with Brexit in South Korea, because obviously the European Union has an agreement with South Korea on behalf of all of the member states. So UK will have to be dealing with how are we, as service providers, professional companies, managing to... we'll probably have to have different agreements with different countries now. Health and safety.
That's a key issue.
Holiday makers. So, you know, European laws had an impact on lots of areas.
Equal pay, maternity rights, all those kind of things. So I think we've got Labour on one hand. I think Jeremy Corbyn is very keen on protecting workers' rights, and you know, seeing where that's going. The Liberal Democrats are also very keen on doing that. And I think the Conservatives are just trying, I guess the government right now is trying to play it cool and sitting on the fence at the moment to see what will happen in the future direction that it's going to take. I got a feeling, and you know, no one knows what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that it's just going to be a natural progression, that EU workers' rights are going to be embedded, and that's going to continue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, interesting you say that, because David Alan Green, who's a legal commentator, he writes a blog post under the name of Jack of Kent. I don't know where it is now, but essentially what it is, what the government is doing is taking out what's called, has created what's called the Great Repeal Bill.
Yeah.
And effectively what that does is it wholesale implements into the legislation here, European law, because we won't over 2 years be able to go through every single different piece of legislation and embed it into UK law in the way that we want. And when I say UK, actually I mean law of England and Wales, and there are separate there's separate legislation for Scotland and for Northern Ireland and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I guess the whole process is not going, it's not entirely straightforward, but we do have the beginning of it, and it, you know, it looks like the way that they're going to deal with legislation is to try and bring it all in, and then over a period of time try and work out what we want to keep and what we don't. I mean, I guess the main areas that people might be interested in is trade.
Yeah, that's a key topic.
I mean, employment we've touched on, and immigration as areas. I mean, just in terms of trade, and if I can say something here about that now. Yeah. I mean, we're lucky as a firm, both myself and Dahlia, who's one of our commercial corporate lawyers, has contributed to a book called Staying Open for Business. Actually, whoever asks the best question will get a free copy of that book, and we've basically contributed to a chapter on trade. Yeah. And essentially, I guess the thing that businesses want to know is what's going to happen.
Yeah, no one knows at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and so look, trade will be how are we exporting, how are we selling to people abroad, and how are people selling to us.
Yeah, and it's going to impact especially small businesses quite a lot. You know, exporting and importing goods and services, and that's going to be a key factor. So make sure you get your questions in, by the way, guys. You're going to get a copy of this free book. And so, you know, really interesting article written by Bhavani and Dahlia. So make sure you get your questions in.
Yeah, get your questions in. Anything to do with European law, anything to do with any of the issues that we talk about today.
Yeah, definitely.
Employment, immigration, any of the topics that arise. So please get your questions in. You know, I wondered on the kind of, the other thing maybe businesses might be thinking about is if they have European staff. I mean, European staff are, you know, present in so many different sectors, whether it's kind of retail, hospitality, hospitals. Yeah. So I don't know whether you kind of have an idea of it. I mean, I get the feeling that obviously free movement of people and what's going to happen to trade are going to be significant areas to change. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think Diane Abbott's recently wrote an article saying that she wants workers to still have free movement, you know, being able to move freely between countries and work wherever they want to work. And she wants to retain that right for us as a country. And I guess now we're still opening up to negotiation. We might be leaving the European Union, but there's obviously negotiation that's going to be going. I think it's going to be a difficult thing to get, because of course the European Union is likely to say no if you can't pick and choose what you want, and that's going to affect other countries who may want to leave in the same term. So I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that would be unreal. Yeah. I mean, the government has already said, you know, they're not going to. They accept that if we want to have access to the single market, then we have to concede on free movement, whereas you know, that seems to be the big political driver for the Brexit vote. So I'm not sure whether that's likely.
I don't think so. What's going to be interesting, I think, is, you know, I think we're going to be in a position like Canada were quite a while back in negotiating with the EU and other countries. So it'll be interesting to see in terms of an immigration point of view, and also from a workers' point of view, for small businesses to go out there and find specialist skills-based services from other countries, and you know, it'll be interesting to see if barriers are opened up there, because at the moment, of course, we have the sponsorship license,
Yeah.
So if you want to hire someone from abroad in a country which is not part of the European Union, you need to get a sponsorship license. There's a formal process in place. I think that we're hoping that with some countries at least, and I know that Theresa May's gone and spoke to certain countries to relax the rules slightly on that. So that'll be quite good for businesses.
I think so. I mean, look, we deal with immigration matters, and what I've seen is that we seem to have got numbers of inquiries about immigration, and quite often coming from outside of the European Union. And I think that people from outside the EU are also looking to see if there's going to be any scope for relaxation for them. So I think the takeaway points for people who are watching or businesses may well be that, yes, there's definitely, I think, going to be change in the way that we deal with our visas and immigration. Very likely to be involved to deal with the kind of skills that we're looking for. I think as a London-based law firm dealing with London-based businesses, one of the things that seems to arise is technology and skilled workers in technology at the moment. I know some of our clients get people from the European Union. It's so easy for them to bring people over and kind of deal with developers. So we'll see what happens around that. I think changes to immigration system, changes, possibly you were talking about to employment.
Yeah, but possibly workers' rights, I think in terms of workers' rights, I think as a country we've got the Equality Act 2010. I think we go further than what the European Union provides, so we were quite adequately protected in that regard. And there's a whole thing on gender pay equality at the moment, so if a company has a certain amount of staff, it's usually large companies, they have to go through a whole gender pay equality process, including questionnaires, and to make sure that there is a gender pay balance, and it could be subject to audits by the government on their contracts, and to make sure that a female worker is getting paid the same as a male worker. So those things are going to remain. I don't feel that's going to change.
No, I mean, one of the things actually I was thinking about this is because there's something else in the papers about Uber.
Oh yes,
Uber's in the papers again. So this time in Denmark, completely different issue. Denmark is saying, look, you guys are a taxi hire company and therefore not a car share company, and they've tightened up the regulations. Uber is pulling out. I know that earlier this year there were a couple of cases, and one of which Uber was involved in, dealing with employment and workers' rights.
That was very interesting, So I think there were two cases actually. There's Uber and a case with City Sprint, which was in January 2017. So both cases working on the same sort of issue, and it's whether or not Uber drivers and workers working for City Sprint are actually self-employed or if they're actually employed. And there's a massive difference between the two. So the Employment Tribunal pretty much decided that case, and they said that, well, the Uber drivers are actually employees, and they should be entitled to the basic employment rights that you get from the European Union. So holiday pay, the right to the national minimum wage. A lot of the Uber drivers were getting paid under the national minimum wage.
Ooh, we've got a message saying, I'm getting a blank screen. Will this important series be released on a box set?
Okay, you're getting a blank screen. Okay, so some technical issues. Let's have a look. Is yours coming in a black screen?
Yeah, hold on. We're still at Solar House but can't see anything going on.
Let's have a look. Seems okay from here.
Yeah. Let us know if people aren't able to see us.
Yeah, it might be just Jonathan's laptop, but if anyone can't see us, then do let us know. Yeah. I think I guess we'll carry on with this last issue that we were just talking about, and then we'll see if anyone's got any questions. Mitch says, I can see you, no close-up of cushion, please. You love it, Mitch, you love it.
All right, so we're still on live.
So we're still live, okay.
Karen, by the way, if you are watching this, it's on Facebook Live, so you don't need to be at the offices. I think I've got a message from him. So we can see you afterwards if you like. Come and drop by. But
there'll be no one at the office.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about this because the gig economy is big, and if people don't know what the gig economy is, it's basically the term used to describe people who are working freelance, flexibly. They may not be on full employment contracts. They might be on something called 0-hour contracts, maybe,
That's
or
right.
like consultancy type agreements, freelance agreements. So and this term, I think, has been bandied around a little bit in the news media. So perhaps if you can tell people what that was all about.
Yeah, sure. So the whole point here, what I was saying previously, is there are a lot of self-employed individual people. The term you loosely use is called contractors, and they essentially are self-employed. They get paid either a day rate for the day that they work, or they get paid per job that they do. So for Uber drivers, they're getting paid for the job that they do. And the whole issue was there's a test in law, and that is whether or not a person is actually an employee of a company, or if he's really, really self-employed and he has his own business and he's working independently. So because all these drivers were just working for Uber and no other cab company, no other black cab company.
But is that right? That's what I'm a bit confused about, because you speak to an Uber driver. Quite often they've got Uber and they've got some other local company.
You would think that, but a lot of the Uber drivers that I've met and spoke to, and I take Uber quite a lot myself, and they've all said that no, we just do Uber.
Okay.
And so this person who's brought the case on just works for Uber. We can't speak for everyone. Some people may be working for different cab companies, but I think the maybe the cab industry generally, and I'm not an expert in this area, but I think the drivers will tend to just service one company because they're kind of used to it, and they prefer the way of working and things like that. So the test is, if you do work for different cab companies, then maybe you might pass the test of being self-employed because you're actually freelance. You're picking and choosing. So it was quite important. So the drivers can argue for holiday pay, national minimum wage, and enhanced workers' rights, sick pay, and things like that, which they weren't currently getting at the moment. And the same thing applies for other gig economies like Deliveroo, for example, and City Sprint, companies like that. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing is, for anyone who's watching who runs a business, that I think they might be asking, look, if I've got a mix of staff, some of whom are on full-time contracts, some of whom are on 0 hours, some of whom might be consultants, but actually effectively I'm giving them the ability to work within my company. Am I at risk? Or because clearly for a business it means national insurance, PAYE. Obviously for workers themselves, they need to make sure they've got IR35 compliant contracts. So what kind of practical stuff comes out of these cases?
So I mean, for businesses to protect themselves, I mean, IR35 compliant contracts are really important. So making sure that you have a substitution clause in there, so should you not be available, you can get someone else to substitute for you, as long as the company agrees. And that shows that you're self-employed.
What
people
about
can work.
Making sure that your contracts state that actually you're not exclusively tied to someone? Does that help? So kind of non-exclusion type clause will be quite good to have in there. And also purchasing your own materials. So if an Uber driver purchases his own car, then that's helpful. Interestingly, in that case, one of the factual issues were that Uber only allows certain cars to be driven. So you'll probably see lots of Toyota Priuses. They're quite common. And so that's one of the approved vehicles that Uber uses. And because of that issue, the judge picked up on it and said, well, you're controlling these people and you're telling them what to do. I guess it's a branding exercise for the company, isn't it?
So it's a balancing act. It's an interesting grey area, and the government have picked up on it. We've seen in the news lately that they tried to make the national insurance contributions level to employees. And so they knew that a lot of people are just becoming self-employed because it's beneficial for tax reasons. And so they're trying to kind of do a balancing act in that area. It hasn't really worked because, of course, they did the U-turn on the national insurance.
Yes, so interesting, as people know, there was the government did earlier this year bring in the last budget. Basically, we had national insurance to be paid by people who are self-employed. There's been a new U-turn on that. I think the whole area, I mean, for people, and it might be good to take some questions actually.
Yeah, well, after this, we'll take some questions.
But I think, for summarising the things that we've been talking about, it seems to us that if you are running your own business, you've got people who are on a mix of different types of contracts. It's best to make sure that the contracts are at least clear about who's in control, is the person using their own tools of work?
Exactly.
Kind of clauses you've got, are they exclusive or not?
Yeah.
And all of these details, I think,
they'll be important. And I'll tell you why it's really important now, because the government have picked up on it. And so what I've read today in the new article that came out is that the HMRC are creating a separate unit, so a whole unit that HMRC have created, a whole department to actually monitor companies and monitor staff employment statuses. So that's going to be really important. So that's why it's important to have the contracts in place, just in case HMRC audit you. And the government are reviewing this area in every 6 months. So I think they're going to be clamping down on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of questions. One was from Wendy. Wendy was asking about a question on passporting, which is to do with Brexit and financial services.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Wendy. I think that the city is probably going to take a very pragmatic approach. London remains a very important financial centre, not just for Europe, but globally.
Yeah.
So someone was telling me that actually London-based banks, have the infrastructure in place that other banks, competing banks in places like Frankfurt, just simply don't have. The issue is that how are they going to deal with this free movement of capital, which is the passporting rights? Even though we're not within the Eurozone, we have the ability to be able to deal with the Eurozone countries. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I think this is going to be an area for wait and watch. I think that there's going to have to be a lot of political manoeuvring, but I think the city is a practical place. They're going to take a pragmatic approach to how to deal with some of the impracticalities that might arise from this. But we've got 2 years. During which we're negotiating the
That's a good question, though.
Very good question.
Yeah. I think Mitch says you've got a nice wallpaper.
Great, thank you. And who taught you about IR35?
Mitch the taxman, the only one.
So look, people keep getting your questions in. It'll be great to get some more questions on the topics we're talking about. We've already talked about Brexit and workers' rights, a bit about immigration. So if you've got questions on immigration or your staff, let us have them. If you've got questions on how to draft your contracts and deal with freelance workers, then let us have them.
Or even if you've got any general comments, just we're happy to take your view. We like debate.
Yeah, we like to debate. We like to talk about these things. Challenge us with any of your questions. It'll be great.
Comment to us. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's great. So I guess one of the topics, one of the things I saw in the newspapers was about the NHS and the problem with junior doctors.
Yeah.
And the issue with junior doctor contracts and how they are really not compliant with employment law. So they going through this judicial review process at the moment to see what's going to happen in the future.
Well,
so that's quite interesting.
That is very interesting because I think when you first mentioned it to me, I thought, well, that's completely bizarre because to have a situation where not only is the government trying to bring in new contracts, but then having those contracts
imposed on them,
challenged on the basis that they're not unlawful is quite interesting. So is it at judicial review stage?
Yeah,
maybe if you explain what that means.
Yeah, sure. So what's happened? The Medical Defence Union, those unions that represent doctors, are against the government and especially Jeremy Hunt and his proposals to impose a junior doctor contract, which is an employment contract for junior doctors, so that they have to work a set number of hours and for a set pay. And so a lot of the doctors are against this because they're going to be working excessive hours, which they say is not in the interest of patient care and patient well-being. So it's a serious issue. I think they've gone past the phase of saying that they're being underpaid, but they're arguing more about whether or not it's justifiable to work for a long period of time, and it's not compliant, they say, with the Working Time Directive, which is what I was speaking to you about earlier. The fact that they need to have a rest period if they work 48 hours consecutively, with very minimum time in between. And if they work at least 11 hours consecutively every day, then they should be allowed a day off. So there's various issues that the government haven't considered in that contract and need to consider. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that for me, it's interesting that employment legislation still has such a significant impact on really public sector worker contracts.
Yeah.
And that ultimately there's going to have to be a review about whether they're compliant. I think more significantly is the fact that I think across the healthcare sector, whether it's junior doctors, whether it's doctors in primary healthcare and surgeries, for example, GPs, there's clearly a lot of strain on the system.
Yeah.
I think that is something that's been in the news for the last few months, and I think a little bit drowned out because of all the Brexit stuff post-June, but I know last year and just before the vote, there was obviously a lot in the papers.
Yeah.
One of the things, and you can tell me if this is right, but one of the things is that the government has done is said to doctors, look, a way of dealing with the funding issues is to create super practices. This has been going on for a bit of time.
Yeah.
And effectively what it means is that practices can come together, have and basically pool all their resources.
Yeah.
Allows them to go for contracts and then basically be able to create these super practices.
Yeah. It's interesting. The only thing about super practices is that it will benefit those senior doctors, but I think the junior doctors that are just starting out doing F1 and F2 training and just going into learning about what area they want to specialise in, they're always going to be impacted, always going to be affected. So I know some of my friends that are doctors are now taking the locum route, which is again interesting because that goes back to the IR35 and the contractors issue. But they're doing more locum work out there, and I think just to get a kind of political viewpoint, a lot of the doctors are going to be leaving the UK and possibly finding work in Australia and places like that where they're treated better and there's better conditions for them. So I think it's going to be a serious strain on our resources. I also think that I think private healthcare is going to become more predominant. I think we're seeing a lot of private healthcare providers in the market now.
But I think some of these things we don't know.
No.
I mean, you can hazard a guess.
Yeah.
That's an opinion, right?
Yeah.
It's not really something we can say is going to happen. But what we do know is that there is definitely a drive to create bigger practices. I think from our point of view, that means that we want to make sure that people understand what the implications of that are. So if you're running your own practice or you have your own surgery, then you need to know about contracting. You also need to know about the properties that you're buying, the leases that you're taking out, the employment issues that arise from all of those things. So that some of these practices will then, in and of themselves, lead to much bigger kind of legal issues.
Yeah, and just going back to that, a lot of the GPs are struggling because the hours have increased, and a lot of the GP partners are struggling managing their practices and actually doing the work as well. So what we're seeing now is a lot of GPs are outsourcing some of their management activities. So, for example, HR and employment stuff, which is stuff that our firm does, and they're outsourcing that to make sure that the employment contracts are compliant, the staff handbooks are compliant, and that they can monitor their GP practice effectively. So that's a given. I think they were initially contracting out to business consultants to see how they can manage it, but increasingly that's changing and helping them manage their day-to-day activities. Really,
I think so. I mean, look, it seems to be the case that businesses now need to be quite flexible in how they're managing things. Whether it's managing staff or dealing with the legal compliance stuff, and it's interesting how all of the different changes that you see, whether it's all the political stuff that's going on or the policy-driven stuff, just means that businesses have to still be thinking about how are we running the business and how are we being compliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, look, I think that if people have any questions, please get them in. But and if you have any questions that you want us to bring up in the next session,
then
we'd be happy to have them, and then maybe we can do a session that kind of deals with some of the issues that you're facing. If you have a business, please drop us a line, let us know what you've been thinking about, what's caught your eye in the news.
Well, if there's anything that caught your eye in the news, any articles, then feel free to post that on our Facebook page and say we want you to talk about this, and then we can see what we can do, and we can have a discussion on it. Let's see if there's any more questions. Let's see, is there any more questions?
I think we've had a few people join us. Yeah, and
give us your questions if you haven't done already.
And if you and in any event, if you post a question after this session is over, the video will go up after we finish in the next few minutes. Post your questions, we'll take a look at them. As I said, there's a free book available, Staying Open for Business, kind of dealing with lots of issues that businesses face, and that's a prize that's available. So take a look at the video and post us your questions. I think we're probably going to try and do another one of these sessions in the next few months. And so, as I said, any questions, get them in. We want to know about the news that's caught your eye, any of the legal questions you've got, whether it's for your business. Send us either a private message or post on our Facebook page, and we'll come back to you, and we'll make sure that we're dealing with it as part of our next session.
Sounds good.
So good.
Right.
Well,
thank you for staying tuned, guys, and I hope you enjoyed that.
And good. And we're looking forward to doing our next one too.
Very much so. Take care, guys. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.